Hello and welcome. I'm Kate.
And I'm Emily, and this is Beyond the Neurotype,
A podcast that explores what it's like to be human affirming, regardless of labels, considerate of every person's individual needs, and allowing us to, ideally, understand what is behind every individual's actions, choices, and needs.
We do this with curiosity and love as we explore these individual and unique experiences that are rich with challenges, growth, and grace.
I'm Kate, a mental health social worker and synergetic play therapist. I'm the co-founder of the Village Therapy Hub. I'm a mum to 2 adolescents, and I love understanding and exploring what is happening beneath the surface for children and adults, and what behaviours are communicating to us. But let me keep it real. Much like yours, my life is a roller coaster. So I also understand the complexities of being a carer, the challenges of the day-to-day, and I won't pretend it's all enjoyable.
I'm Emily, a neurodivergent mum to a beautiful autistic girl and wife to a wonderful autistic man. I'm passionate about celebrating neurodiversity and creating a community where people are seen, held, and loved for who they truly are. It is my hope that as you listen to the stories of our beautiful guests, you feel inspired, validated, and supported in your journey.
This podcast is recorded on the land of the Dja Dja Wurrung people. We offer our heartfelt gratitude to the traditional custodians and elders, past, present, and emerging, for continued opportunities to learn, reflect, and grow. When Emily and I first started discussing the podcast and thinking about people in our world that we would want to talk to, people that we would want to share their experience of living their truest, authentic self, this person was easily one of the first people that I thought of. Mim is someone that Emily and I have known for a number of years, and she has this incredible capacity to express what she feels deeply and do it in a way that is so true to who she is. I know this hasn't always been the case for Mim, so I'm really excited to get to talk to her about the journey that's brought her to where she is today. She's a mama to 3 beautiful children, creator of the most magnificent singing circle I've ever experienced, and an incredible human. Welcome, Mim.
Oh, thank you. I'm very touched by that introduction. That is so beautiful. And thanks so much for having me. I'm both excited and a little terrified to be here. I've never done a podcast before. So thanks for having me.
Some of the best things are both terrifying and exciting at the same time, aren't they?
Yes, I am learning. Yes. I'm leaning into that more and more.
Mim, I mentioned in the intro that it hasn't always been the case that you've lived a life that's so authentic and so honouring of who you are. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got to this place and perhaps a little about the journey, your experiences before that?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for asking the question. It's a great question. And it is one that, it is a bit of a journey to retell. I guess, I do believe that everyone is born into this world as their unique, beautiful selves. And I feel really passionately about honouring that in myself and my children. Yet that didn't just come about. It's taken a journey to reach that place. And I guess I wrote some words and I think I'm just going to turn them over and speak from the heart because they're just, look, I think I, for a long time, didn't really know who I was. I had lost myself somewhere along the way. And it took a lot to come back to that. I think it was when I became a mother that I, for the first time in a very long time, reconnected with something that felt really true with me. And before that, I didn't really know it, but I'd lost who I really was. And I guess to understand that, I guess I kind of have been reflecting on how did I lose myself? What happened? And I think I I was born into this world, as we all are, as a beautiful, perfect little human, a very sensitive soul. I feel things and felt things very deeply, think about things very deeply. And I guess in a world, in a culture that doesn't really, really honor sensitivity and feelings, we often have to protect up, toughen up. But I was beautiful me. I hadn't done that yet, yay. And my mum was a beautiful, sensitive soul. And as nature intended, I was perfectly attached. And that was just perfect. We grew up in the bush, and yeah, it was really lovely. But then I turned 4, and in this culture, when you're 4, you go off to kindergarten. And my mum had trained as a kindergarten teacher, and she felt like that was the most important thing. And I had no idea what was coming, but I do remember back to that time of even stepping inside that kindergarten foyer. And I remember the smell of the chlorine and the smiling faces of the kindergarten teacher and the assistant. And I kind of got this sense of, oh, I know what's going on here. Like, I'm going to have to separate. I won't get to be with my closest, my most loved being in the world. And I'm going to be handed over to strangers. And for me, as a deeply, highly sensitive soul, for me, that felt distressing beyond words. And I remember I crawled under the safety of my mum's skirt, and I held onto her leg as tightly as I could. And I remember the teacher coming and holding me and pulling me away from the the embrace of my mum's leg. And I was screaming, crying, kicking wildly for my mum. And I so clearly did not want that separation. But that was not honored, I guess, in our culture, that, it's the normal thing. So that had to happen. In that moment, I created such a noise, obviously, that they put me in the office, the little teacher's office, alone, closed the door. And I was left alone in my feelings, in my distress, in my, as I now see it, trauma. I remember climbing up on the desk and looking through the little window, and I saw my mum's little green car drive away. And it was the most distressing thing. And yet that process of being dropped into the hands of strangers, that, eventually that they did become more familiar, but it was definitely not where I wanted to be most. I wanted to be with my mum. And it happened day after day after day. And that continued into my first year of schooling, prep, as we call it here, and grade 1 and grade 2. And, I remember running out of, being dropped in the classroom and running out after my mum and my younger brother, crying and my mum walking me back into school. Yet, I kept being taken back every day. And I guess why I'm sharing about this is because I'm talking about I lost myself somewhere along the way. And I think that these are my earliest memories of having to, the feelings were so big, yet I was in an environment that didn't feel emotionally safe. They were strangers to me. I didn't have strong attachments and connections with these people. So it wasn't safe to express it. So what did I do? I pushed it down. And in pushing it down, I disconnected from my true self, my feelings, my yeses, my nos. And I just learned that this is how it is. And I just need to kind of toughen up and survive. And I did it. And I did it really well. How did I do it? Well, I did it by even more disconnecting from myself. I became a really good girl. What does that look like? I was really quiet, was good for the teacher. I did really well with, academics. Like I'd try my best with the assignments. I'd always go above and beyond. So I'd get seen a little. I worked out that if I'm going to be in this place every single day, I need some sort of attachment connection. I need to be seen in some way. So I tried for it with the teacher. I just did everything to get them to see me. I was so good, so quiet, so doing the right thing. Just see me, love me, love me. But in that process, I got this idea, this belief that my goodness, my sense of me, my sense of who I am is reliant, is conditional on others. It's on how others, if they see me in the first place, but how they see me, how they judge me, how I am in comparison with others. So I also learned to judge myself against others. To me, school was kind of like a bit of a competition. I had to be the best all the time, the best at spelling, the best person at sitting there quietly for the teacher to notice you and give you a sticker, well done. I became really good at being the best, trying to be the best, trying to be really, really perfect. Scroll forward to, teenagehood, being in high school. What did that look like? I lost myself in, still with this, carrying this belief that my goodness is reliant on what other people think of me. It translated to I needed boys to like me. I needed to be beautiful. That's what I need my worth was about how I looked more. So, I'd wear makeup all the time. I didn't feel okay just as me. I needed to be noticed by others a lot and by my peers. And when it came to, say, dating boys, I didn't have a strong bearing of who I was, what I was a yes to, what I was a no to. I did things that I probably absolutely was a no to. I'd lost myself. I could be anyone for anyone. I could turn myself inside out. I could be this person with this friend and this person with this friend and then talk about that person badly. I just worked out how I need to be in this environment to survive. But in the process, I really lost me. And then, you reach the end of your schooling years, 13 years of it. And, there's this idea that this wonderful process, you've developed this strong idea of who you are, what you love, your passions in the world, what you want to share with the world. Well, I didn't have a blooming idea. And my parents said I'd make a beautiful teacher. I'm creative. I'm caring, blah, blah, blah. So it was either that or psychology. And I chose teaching, which I think is really interesting. I chose early childhood to be a kindergarten teacher, the very profession that had brought about a lot of distress and trauma for me. But I'd so squashed those feelings down so long ago, it was long forgotten. it was not even in any of my awareness. So there I went off to uni for 4 years. I trained to be a kindergarten teacher. I was, always trying to be perfect. So when I graduated, I worked out, people pleaser. This is what I learned really, really well to do. What do you require of me, system? And I'll do it perfectly. So, I worked in a really prestigious school in Melbourne, and I remember the director telling me my greatest moment. She said, "You are a star teacher, Mim." And I thought, wow, I've really done it. I've really made it. And my mum was unwell at the time, and I had a bit of a breakdown the first year in of teaching. Yeah, my first year out, I was the director of a brand new kindergarten. I had one group of 4-year-olds. I had 29 in one group and 25 in the other group. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm a total fraud. Like, the fact I'm meant to be knowing these children, each individual child, reporting on each individual child, planning the program on each individual child. I just thought that's what I would take photos and kind of write up stuff. I felt like I was just doing what I needed to do to look good on the outside, but really deep down, I felt like I was kind of drowning. But I did love the creativity and, but yeah, it was a lot. And so I had a bit of a breakdown first year in, which was a real blessing in disguise because I stepped back, I took the pressure off, and I became a relief teacher. And I worked all over Melbourne. I worked in all sorts of settings. I worked in childcare centres, kindergartens, and I'd done in my training, I'd done some training in primary school as well. And then fast forward a few years, I guess I sort of would like to reflect on in being a teacher, though, on the outside it looked like I was really good, in inverted commas. I still now I can reflect back and see how it wasn't actually a wonderful experience for all of those children, because just because of the nature of having such a large group of children and there was just me, it was, about crowd control a lot of the time. Even though I was lovely in it and making it as nice as possible, there was a lot of coercion that went on, a lot of not seeing each individual child, a lot of not being able to meet each child's needs and hear their feelings. I just kind of did things to them, plonked things on them. And I now feel, I'd like to go back to those children and acknowledge that and apologize, actually. But while I was doing, being a teacher, I remember thinking, knowing that I wanted to be a mother one day, and thinking, when I'm a mother, I cannot imagine caring for other people's children as my job while someone else cares for mine. I want to be with them. I've just done this degree that's taught me all the important stuff about, well, actually, it didn't teach me a whole lot, but, I actually knew that from a deeper place. I wanted to be connected with them. So fast forward a few years, I met my beautiful husband, Aaron, and a couple of years later, we had our first child, Eliza. And I think I mark this, I've been sharing the story thus far of losing myself, of becoming disconnected from my truest self, not knowing who I was. But there was something that I can now see there was a whole process that occurred in becoming pregnant, growing a human, the process of birth. I mean, it was profound. And, it was over 5 days, and I visited all the places emotionally, and bringing Eliza into this world. I just remember the next day thinking, like, wow, I am amazing. My body is amazing. I remember looking around at women in the following weeks just going, wow, you did it and you did it and you did it. Like, we are incredible beings. And, that was the first little seed of reconnecting with my power as a human, as a mother, reconnecting with something that felt alive for the first time in a long time, my intuition. You know, um, Doctors suggesting 2 days after Eliza was born that I needed to take her to the Bendigo Hospital from Castlemaine. There was no bed for me. I needed to leave her there, and me tuning in, hang on, is this what I really am a yes to? And saying, actually, no, I'd like to keep her here, and we keep watching her. And, there was something in that oxytocin, that love, that being connected with my body, there was something greater took over, the attachment bond. I was not doing this. Nature was doing something to me. I was mothering. And it was like this superpower that took over me. And it just kept unfolding. I'd set up this perfect nursery with a cot. I bought this beautiful Swedish design co-sleeper, but I kept my heart kept being pulled at, tugged at, and I don't want to put her in a co-sleeper. I want her close. I want her connected. It was, and I kept trusting myself. And I think that this was the first time in a long time I was trusting myself. I trusted that. I trusted me, and I trusted my instincts as a mother. I get trusting, and going with life for the first time, not someone else's agenda. And, later birthed Hannah 4.5 years later, and I chose a different path for the birth because the first one I birthed naturally. I'd wanted to do that, but there was some trauma in the end in the birth of the placenta, and I decided no. As a super highly sensitive being, I know I feel most safe and at home in my body, at home. So I decided to home birth, and it was again another unraveling of connecting with my power, being in awe with my body, and trusting my intuition and feeling my intuition so strongly. And then same thing with birthing Amelia. It was a very peaceful birth with Hannah, and a really wild birth that, again, just totally on my terms in a way that felt really good for me. And I guess that trust has set me in really good stead to follow that, rather than, I go with that rather than feeling, as I once did, disempowered, not knowing myself, and wishy-washy. Whatever anyone said, I'd do that, and then I'd do this and I'd do that. And I can see if I was still in that place, I wouldn't have been able to make the decisions that I've made, because I guess I have, been able to let my heart be my guide rather than our cultural norms be my guide. And that's felt both really empowering and also really challenging too. It hasn't been the path that's felt the easy one, in some respects, because, you're always met with resistance when you're going against some really strong cultural norms. So, my children have never been to childcare or kinder or school. I've chosen to stay close and connected with them. And why not? I guess from my own journey, from my own experience, becoming aware, and actually, I'm not sure that I became awake to it before deciding this. It was more love or something greater guiding me in these decisions. But I guess the most important thing to me is that my children get to grow to their fullest potential and not lose who they are in the process. And for me, that's in the context of attachment, connection, and togetherness, and in the context of love. And I knew that I could absolutely offer all of those things. I knew that learning thrives when you are feeling deeply loved, seen, you freedom to be who you are, freedom to and an honoring of who you are, your uniqueness. You know, Eliza has been my greatest teacher. She, like me, is a deeply sensitive soul. And I just knew, I mean, I didn't know, but I knew, and it's been a process. I mean, early on, she said, Mama, she'd look around and see, you know, children in their school uniforms and stuff. She knew I used to be a teacher. She said, Mama, I will go to school, but, you know, only if you will be my teacher. And what she was saying is, I don't want to be disconnected from you. She said, I don't want to be disconnected from Hannah, her sister. So, you know, I guess I was starting to get this feeling that for my children to thrive, for them to feel deeply connected with who they are. And, you know, I think, what is the whole point? What is the whole point of life? For me, it's that. It's about connection. It's about togetherness, and it's about feeling never losing yourself. And from that place, you get to share your joys and your loves with the world from that place. I felt like staying close and connected was a really wonderful fit for us, and always will be. So yeah, I
Mim, I think listening to your story, there will be so many people that this resonates with, that potentially don't have the solid, concrete memories to attach to when the shifts happened. And I just think it's incredible that you have such a deep insight into your experiences, that you can retain memories and you know, go back to concrete places. But a lot of people continue to push through and continue to meet expectations and do things the way they need to. And there's a real conflict in that around, but, you know, how can you possibly do it differently? Like, how do we, and, you know, the reality is people look at it and go, but I can't possibly afford that, or, you know, what a luxury, or, you know, all those other things that, because we have been raised to believe that we have to be consumers and that we need to have all these things in our worlds. And I am sure that you have made conscious choices of sacrifices, or probably not even what you would see as sacrifices, but would be considered by society as sacrifices along the way. And I imagine those are not just financial, but I bet they're also social and, you know, in a range of ways as well. And I don't really know what my question is. I just feel like I wanted to really acknowledge that it's almost quite confronting as someone who connects so deeply with the things you're saying, but feels like they're still so stuck in the shoulds and expectations of the world. Like, that it hurts. Like, it hurts. I think Emily feels the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
And there's a lot of admiration for the way you've been able to see and connect with that power. Like, I think, from my experience, I felt very similar things when my child was born, but I just still listened to everything everyone said, because what would I know? you know, it was still another instance of course, these people know better than me. And it's been this experience of people know better than me forever.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I can, that's exactly what I'm speaking to. And that people know better than me, that feeling like, what do I even think here? I'll just ask someone. And I think that's where having this kind of awakening to like, oh, who the hell is Mim? Oh, hello. Like, it's been such a deeply profound experience, and not an easy one, but I feel, I guess, I love supporting women to more and more step into or feel safe enough to, in the context of love, to feel safe enough to just the littlest bit connect in with something that feels real for them. Because I really feel like the change in the world that's needed, it's not going to come through those politicians with hardened hearts and who don't even know what feelings are. It's going to come through us beautiful, sensitive, us women who we know our hearts know what's needed. Our hearts know how to treat each other with love and compassion. And yet our culture doesn't, it's not safe to be that, is it? I mean, it never was for me at school, definitely not. And I guess the greatest gift for me in reconnecting with myself is that the bits that I used to believe are my weakness, my sensitivity, I'd feel too much. They would say, oh, you're too sensitive. You're too sensitive. So I really listened to that and I really shut it off. I shut it down. And in doing so, I lost my voice. I had no idea what I was a yes to and a no to. And I became really harsh on myself. A lot of coercing myself to do things I wasn't a yes to, a lot of guilting myself, a lot of shaming myself, a lot of harsh inner. It's like I turned on myself so I could be okay in the world. And in the process, it was destroying me. And it's taken my whole adulthood to kind of undo all that damage. And the healing is actually a really simple one. It's just by wrapping myself up in love and being really unwilling to be harsh with myself and really welcoming in a whole lot of compassion and surrounding myself with really spaces where I feel like I can bring in my sensitivity, which I now see as my superpower, not my weakness, and be me, be authentically me. Like, what does that mean? Like, I'll rock up to, a singing group, beautiful women's singing group where I met you both. And, sometimes we'll sing a song and a song that will move me, and all of a sudden I find that there's tears. Now, once upon a time, my God, I would have been so guarded up, I wouldn't even known there was feelings. And then I quickly would have come in with some harshness, like, cut that out. It was not safe. But, I'm loving on myself more and more and more, reminding myself that my voice, my expression of feelings, my vulnerability, my sensitivity is actually a gift to the world. And little bit by little bit, I'm enjoying just sharing some of that. So we've recently formed a little women's singing circle. And I'm holding it tonight, actually. And, it's not because I'm a choir master. There I am, needing to be that perfect self again. But it's about creating a really safe space, a loving, compassionate space where women can just come in, walk through that door with whatever is there. They could have had a really tough day. They could be carrying some deep grief that I will not know about. They could be feeling, have just had a whopper of an argument with their partner. They could be so stressed about finances, whatever. We are all in this together. It's about sisters, about as women, we're coming together and not in competition with each other. We are together as sisters, and we are creating a loving space where everyone and all parts of ourselves are welcome. And I feel like the more spaces like that are in this world, it's inviting in. It's a little invitation to say, hey, you are perfect as you are. You don't need to be anything here. You can just be beautifully you. You know, you can be feeling so unshiny right now, and that is so perfect. You are welcome, all of you.
And it's such a gift to the other people. I just as you're speaking, I remember a time where you did get very emotional at singing, remembering your beautiful mum, and that's stuck with me, and that's really imprinted on myself. And there wasn't a person in that room that wasn't in tears and moved at how beautifully you were able to just express your raw grief, and we were able to hold you. And that was such a gift for all of us to be able to do that for you, but then it allows us to do it too. And yeah, that's a moment that's really stuck with me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Me too. And you know, funnily, I could feel a little voice in myself after that, like, oh, was that too? Oh, and I wasn't willing. I wasn't willing to do the harshness that I once would have done. And I just, no, like you being human and your feelings arose. And I didn't know it either, but when I looked around, I saw the whole circle of women too in tears. And it felt so beautiful to share that vulnerability with others, and what a gift. And yeah, I received some messages behind the scenes after that saying, thank you so much. You know, people, we are feelings beings. We're not thinking beings. Our hearts are drawn in by emotion, by vulnerability. It is actually what makes us human. It's not what we were taught, is it? It's not ever what we were welcome to do, but to feel fully is to be fully human. And I love remembering that, because it's kind of my little buffer, my little bubble in the world, being a sensitive soul. I mean, I think we're all sensitive souls, but you know, it allows me to be me in a culture that doesn't honor feelings, doesn't honor being truly connected with yourself. And yeah, I imagine a world where everyone is connected with their feelings. They get to express their feelings in loving spaces. And, you know, we don't have to be, it's when we don't get to express them that we hold it all in, and then we become aggressive. And, you know, it's because there's all this, like, you know, like a Coke bottle shaken up, the lid's still on. You know, we need to feel, we need to express. And that's what our children need. So I feel, you know, I bring this into my parenting, my mothering, you know, and that's the beauty of being with them all of the time. When they're tired, they get to rest. When they're hungry, they get to eat. When they're feeling angry, they get to express anger. Who got to express that? Anger was always the one I'd push down as a child. That was not okay. They get to express their sadness. They get to be them, fully them. And isn't that what we all want and need? And I think the more we can do that for ourselves, the more we can do that for our children. And I think that's a pretty powerful thing to be doing for this world.
And I really want to acknowledge that. Oh, and you can hear, it's so interesting. It's not accidental that my throat is doing what it's doing every time I try and talk to you, Mim. I'm no longer going to try and harshly clear it, because my throat is tightening, because my voice on this feels really weak. I listen to you, and it's very hard not to step in a place of judging myself harshly, of feeling like I have let myself down, I am not shown up authentically, I've not honoured my being my entire 42 years. And I find, I have had to really consciously step into spaces with yourself and other people who are as able to connect to themselves as you, and do that really boldly, because it's not easy for me to be confronted with someone who is so able to honor who they are and show up in every way that looks like. I actually have a rule at that singing group that you're talking about, that I don't cry. Like, I have made myself an internal rule, and I don't know when I did it, and I only just became conscious of it in the last kind of 6 months, that I had actually decided that crying's not something I do at that group. Other people cry, and that's great for them, but it's not what I'm going to do. It's not what I'm here for. And realizing that was the first step to me being able to acknowledge why that might be and what that means for me. But if I hadn't have been exposed to people who were willing to do that, I would never have become conscious of the fact that that was even a rule. So I guess I'm wanting to name that it can be really easy to listen to this conversation and come at yourself with criticism, and that the invitation is in to actually just acknowledge that I do that and have done that and show up as I do because that's something I have needed. There's been a part of me that needs to be protected, that needs to protect myself. This is all stuff I have learned in my journey around how to feel safe, how to create safety in my world. And along the way, I can choose to shift or put myself in uncomfortable situations if I want to expand my tolerance and my capacity for that. But that's not always easy or possible. And the practice is actually in noticing that and stepping in and out of it as we feel capable of. So I guess it just feels important to me to acknowledge that we all do what we do for our own sense of safety.
Absolutely.
And it's undoing, a lifetime of conditioning, It's a big thing to undo. And I think I've got similar feelings to you, Kate. Often, I have such admiration for Mim, and often the double edge of that is then criticism for myself, because I'm not living as authentically as Mim is. And as a child that struggled with school, I've done that to my child, what was done to you. And so that was really hard, listening to your recollection of that moment. But you're so right, Kate. It's just the acknowledging, and that's where the starting point is to then start to reverse some of this conditioning that's been done to us. It's through no fault of our own. It's been done to us, and probably through no fault of the people that conditioned us as well. It's just the way society is, and recognizing those moments where you are ignoring your true feelings, and certainly has been the key for me to start stepping into myself a lot more. Is just first acknowledging, I'm doing this, and I've said this, or I've said I was okay with this, and actually I was feeling not okay with this. And that's been the key for me in, starting some change.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Emily, and thank you for sharing, Kate. And oh my goodness, I resonate with everything. And I feel some feelings when you say as living as authentically as Mim, because I guess, there's some comparison there, isn't there? And with love, I'm not willing for either of you to compare yourself, because I do that too, and I just want to say, keeping it real, this is a journey, and as I just shared, I still have the wounds of getting very harsh with myself. I am not free from it yet. So when you say you're living your life most authentically, I am still in the process of freeing myself from guilt, from shame, from harshing myself. And my goodness, do I want that for my children. It is my biggest motivator. And I just want to say, Emily, you put it so beautifully, that we were not born into this world as beings that were not listening to our yeses, our nos. We knew we would, when we felt sad, we'd cry. When we felt angry, we would express it. When we were a yes, my God, we would express that yes. When we were a no, we would so with all of our body express that no, but you go to the park, you see what happens to that toddler who expresses that no. You see, we squash it. We quickly make them so-called good. And it's not parents that are the problem. It's not the teachers that are the problem. But I think the biggest awakening for me is that our culture is not set up to keep us connected with our power, our feelings, our yeses, our nos, our sensitivity, our vulnerability. All of those things are not okay. And the more that we can step into spaces where we make that, not where we, myself, Mim, I need to do, because that's just another thing I need to do. I'm not doing this and well enough. I need to do this. But I believe stepping into more and more spaces where you feel really held in love and really welcomed with all of you, like singing or like women's circles, whatever it is, like speaking with someone who deeply cares for you and sharing something real, the more you just practice that, just a little, just try it a little and feel okay in it. You feel okay to be. I formed a women's circle. We've been circling for about 2 years, and recently I expressed some anger. And I think it was the first time in my adulthood that I've actually expressed anger fully, like an animal, and felt loved in it. The women, they just came around me and they just held me with so much love, and I expressed it fully. And my God, it was incredible. I didn't realize that I just don't express anger. I just don't express it. It comes out in harshness often on myself. The more that we create spaces in the world, I keep saying, where this is the norm, let's make feelings the norm. Let's make being vulnerable. I mean, we're not going to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable is it's a gift. We only do that with those that are going to, I was only vulnerable at that singing circle that time when I felt grief about my mum, because I felt really emotionally safe in that space. And I've been part of that group for almost 10 years. It's a total honor, isn't it? So, there's only a few people that I am really vulnerable with. But, I set up listening partnerships where something big is going on. I get on Voxer and I just step out into the laundry and I say, I share what's going on. The more that we can share and be held in love and put voice to our feelings, and just reflected back more and more and more that it's beautiful. It's okay. It's not okay. Not that it's okay. It's you. It's you being you, and that is beautiful. It's a gift to the world. That is where we get to shift. and awaken to ourselves.
You know, one way, Mim, that I've been, and you've just reminded me of this, that I've been practicing sharing more about what's truly going on for me is using voice memos as a way to connect with people instead of text or phone calls. And what I'm discovering through that is that because I'm not in a conversation, because I'm not conscious of the other person's reactions, I'm not changing my tone or my thoughts based on their face or what I then believe I'm doing to them or creating in them. I don't moderate myself as much, and I actually get to finish, like someone can't cut me off. Like it's not a conversation. Like I'm not allowing them to come in halfway through my thought with their thought. And it's been a big growth space for me in a number of relationships, because suddenly I'm able to see my full thought about something or figure out my entire feeling about something without conforming to someone else, whoever else, which I've done my entire life. No matter how safe I feel with someone, I conform in the moment to how they're being impacted. And I would never go, too far if I thought it was going to upset someone else. If I start talking about something and they start being impacted by that, suddenly I'm fine. I'm fine. Don't worry about that. I'm fine. And the voice memos, it's taken time and it's taken choosing who I do that with. But it's shifting. It's creating shifts. And I still can't. Interestingly, the other day I was sent a voice memo to a friend. I was really distressed about something. And I sent a voice memo to a friend and I started crying in the voice memo. Like I was crying and crying and I could not stop crying. And I stayed on the voice memo, which was really hard because I wanted to say, okay, I'm going to go now. But I stayed so that I had company in my tears. And it's probably important to note, like my rule at Macapella, I don't cry in front of people. Like that's not my deal. So to cry on a voice memo was a massive deal. And then that person said to me, I'm home right now and I have the kettle on, come. And everything in me wanted to say, no, my God, I've just cried in a voice memo to this person. I'm not going to look at you. Like, no, I'm fine. And then I sat down to start doing the next thing that I needed to do. And I just had this strong sense of go to the person. And so I stopped what I was doing and I sent them back a message and said, yep, I'm on my way. And then I went and we didn't rehash the conversation. I didn't cry again and I didn't cry in front of them. But for the first time, I allowed myself to go with that memory so fresh and raw. And that's huge for me. And so I get to acknowledge that, you use the word journey a lot. And I think that that's a beautiful word for all of this, because there isn't a destination. There is no, the end game is death. Everything on the way to that is part of the unraveling and the exploring and the creating and the deep diving. Like no one ever gets to an age where they're like, I've got it. This is how I'm going to be forever. I love this me right now for the rest of my life. That's not the idea. So when we give ourselves a hard time for our process and look back and judge ourselves, we're just being unfair, because I often say who I am today is not who I'll be next week, and who I am next week is not who I'll be in a year, and who I am in a year is not who I'll be in 10 years. That is forever evolution. So there's a gift in seeing it that way, isn't there? And knowing that everything that came before got me to where I am right now, and where I am right now will be part of where I am in the future.
Absolutely. It's a much more compassionate way of, rather than, I still, I think, oh gosh, haven't I? I've done almost 15 years of therapy, surely by now. Yes. I'm not guilting myself and harshing myself. And, I'm finding that love is the way, and it's love in the presence of others. We're not designed to be on our own, doing ourselves on our own.
Mm.
Like we're women. We're women. Like we need our sisters, and not, as our culture has set us up to be always in competition and
Yes.
being on top of, that's destructive as well. That's taking our power away as sisters. So it's kind of like really seeing this culture for what it is, and like which bits am I a yes to, which bits am I a no to, and then realizing I was not born with this thing that I do to myself now. I, Mim, was not born harshing myself, judging myself, shaming myself, coercing myself. That is not how I was born into this world. That came from our culture, and culture is designed to be handed down, and it's been beautifully passed down. Thank you, culture. Now I get to unload it, offload it. But that takes a lot of like, am I willing? Am I not willing? Am I willing to harsh myself right now? Am I willing to judge myself right now? No. It's starting with a real fierce love, for oneself and each other. Because if I'm still being harsh to other people, maybe not outwardly, but in my head, oh gosh, what is she doing? Oh, I am still looking at this world through a lens of it's not my power. My power, I believe, is love. And I think that is our power as humans. We're wired for love. We're wired for connection. We're wired for togetherness. That is what brings full fulfillment, I think. And yet we've been conditioned to do quite the opposite. It's all about disconnection, and disconnection from our power and each other and our feelings. So,
And love has almost been weaponized to a point of like you either have to earn the love of someone else, in order to be worthy, or you have to give love to someone else, in order for them to be fulfilled, or to, whatever the motivator for us is. I've got to love them so they stay. I've got to love them so that they love me. I've got to love them, for all the reasons. And so love's almost been weaponized. Like, but I love you, so you should do this thing, or you should feel this way, or you should forgive me because I love you, rather than it being this deeply felt thing. And almost, and for me, love is terrifying, and it's why I struggle so badly with relationships and can't maintain them and don't stay in them. A fundamental piece of that, and a recent realization for me, is how difficult it is for me to experience love. And I'm the mother of 2 children, so I could certainly avalanche into some judgment in that respect, and I'm choosing not to, because it's just something I'm noticing about myself. And in the noticing comes, all the other bits. But yeah, love feels weaponized.
yeah, it's a big act of vulnerability. And I guess when we were born into this world, we were born vulnerable. And the way that we survived was through attachment, through love. It's nature's way of making sure we're taken care of. And I guess because at some point for many of us, those attachment needs weren't fully met. Like me, I was disconnected from my attachment figures, and I guarded up. So then my love needs kind of became very like to meet my own quick needs, but it wasn't really a full experience of love. I'd invite that friend in so I didn't feel on my own out in the playground, but actually then behind their back, I think it's to start with ourselves, a real love for ourselves and each other is a really good place to start.
I think that's a beautiful place to probably end our discussion. Thank you so much, Mim, for sharing your journey with us so beautifully. And what a privilege it is for us to have you on here today. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
And thank you so much for having me on here to share. I feel like, there's real sharing is like our right as women to share from the heart, and it's definitely part of my healing. So thanks for hearing all that I've shared. Much love to you both.
And we'll perhaps put a link to where people can find your singing circle, Mim, and just any other information that feels relevant to accessing the things that you're putting out in the world, knowing that that's all pretty localized and in person, which is so gorgeous. But we'll offer out what we can for people to find.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mim. For more information on today's conversation and guest, head to the links provided in the description. Please like and subscribe to keep up to date with more content, and it helps us out with the algorithm too. Beyond the Neurotype is not a licensed medical or mental health service, and any information or advice given is general in nature. Please seek professional help if anything mentioned in today's episode has raised questions or concerns.